Good morning, everybody. So the session for today is that we will be doing account schedules. What I'm going to be doing is running you through some of the functionality, some concepts behind it. We'll be talking about how account schedules are reusable. I'd like to show you budgets and how they tie into account schedules, columns and row layouts, opening of account views so that you can do a snapshot for a point in time, and then various filters and buttons and export to Excel functionality, etc. So that's the schedule for today. Great, to get started. So first things first, we are looking at NAV 2013 as the system. The functionality that I'll be demonstrating to you is also available in NAV 2009. So everything we're doing now, you'll be able to see in NAV 2009 as well. So looking at the account schedules window, we have a list of the various account schedules that are available. Now, what the account functionality allows you to do is to create default reports. In the demonstration system that we've got here, you've got a capital structure analysis, a campaign analysis, standard schedule, which at this point is actually blank, and we might do some work in there, and a revenue schedule as well. The idea behind account schedules is to be able to reuse functionality. So in order to do that, what they've done is they've broken it up into three areas. The first area is the columns themselves. So if I select the revenue schedule and I edit the account schedule, sorry, that's the rows we're going to look at first, you'll see that the rows on this particular schedule consist of revenue, sales of retail, sales of retail domestic, miscellaneous and export, job sales adjustment, sales of retail total, and this is a totaling account, and then some various subtotals drawn out of the financial system. So the first section of account schedules is the actual lines on the report itself. The next part of the account schedule is the columns. So once again, thinking of a standard financial report, you've got rows down the left-hand side, and along the top you've got columns which generally represent dates. So year-to-date, month-to-date. In this situation, the columns we're looking at is net change, budget, and the percentage variance between your net change and your budget. So these are columns. Now what account schedules allows you to do is mix and match between columns and rows. So you could be looking at your revenue report and adding columns of budget versus actual to your revenue report. Then reuse your revenue report lines and change the columns to be year-to-date versus previous period year-to-date versus previous year-to-date. So the lines and columns are interchangeable on the account schedules. The third part to the account schedules is the actual records that are being used themselves. Now, these specific records form part of the analysis view that you see here. If I look up on the analysis view and edit on it, what you'll see is that this is a set of general ledger lines. And perhaps to try and explain that is, if you are going to be using a set of GL accounts in your profit and loss statement, for example, you'll create an analysis view card. In the analysis view card, you'll specify the GL accounts that are going to be used. You'll also specify any date filters that need to be applied. You'll specify what dimensions you want to use in the account schedules, and then whether or not the system must automatically update this account schedule. So, as was mentioned in the email that was sent out relating to this, you're actually able to do a snapshot of your chart of accounts at a point in time. You can create an analysis view card, take a snapshot of what your chart of accounts looks like, and save that for future reporting. So that's the analysis view card. So a quick recap, 3 parts that make up an account schedule. The first part, each of these areas in a bit more detail. And those columns will consist normally of dates. And then the final part will be the GL transactions themselves. Great. So, having a look at it in a little bit more detail. If I select revenue and I say edit account schedule, these are the rows that I showed you a second ago. There is quite a bit of functionality that you can actually use with regards to these rows. When you're capturing a new set of rows, you'll fire up the account schedule, you'll specify a new row in here, and showing columns, you can see the row number, which is used in your future calculations, the description as you want it to appear on the actual report, whether this row is looking at GL posting accounts, whether it's doing a total, whether it's calculating based on a formula or a set percentage, some cash flow details, if the row is totaling a particular account or a set of accounts, whether it's looking at the net change within that GL account, balance at date or beginning balance, and net amounts, does the actual row display, and this is quite a good field with regards to whether the row displays, because when you're creating your report, you might want to create rows which are only used in calculations. So take, for example, an inventory account where you want to add several inventory accounts together. You create those rows within the account schedule and then subtotal them, but you don't want the actual original rows to show, you only want the subtotal to show. Using this functionality, you can create those 3 rows, specify that no, you don't want it to show, and then only show the subtotal. The other bit of functionality that this offers is you can tell the line that it must only show if any column is not 0 or when there's a positive or negative balance. So think, for example, you might have a revenue account that only shows up when the balance is favorable. That could be set here. Something else the system allows you to do is create almost a definition for a report. So think, for example, that you are creating almost a board pack. On that board pack, you want the first page to show a title, then you want your profit and loss to show, then you want some inventory details to show, and then perhaps some a cost of sale type details to show, and each on its own separate page. So running down this report, you could specify from this point, the system must start a new page, and from this point, the system must start a new page. And when it's actually running this out into a printed report, it will process the first lines, skip to the next page, process the next lines, skip to the next page, and so on. So that's what the new page field allows you to do. These departments as well, also very, very good functionality and a good description of how you would use department and project totaling. And in this demo system, it's department and project, but for you it might be an office code, it might be a dimension for a particular item or a particular service. So it's the dimensions on your account, on your Navision system. And what the dimensions allow you to do is to specify the same GL account, but with different filters on it. So once again, to try and explain through an example, imagine you have a stationery account, and you want to display the stationery spend per office code within your Navision system. So on your lines, you will create stationery, you'll specify office A, then you'll repeat the line by creating another stationery line, but with office B, and another line with office C. Change the description to read stationery spend for office A, stationery spend for office B, and stationery spend for office C. And literally what you're doing is you're displaying the same GL account several times, but with a filter applied of a particular dimension. And we'll come back to how dimensions are included in the analysis view in a little while. So that's a bit of an overview with regards to the account schedule lines. Very brief recap, account schedule lines are the lines that are listed down the left-hand side of your report, and they can repeat GL accounts, they apply filters to the GL accounts, and they can also use subtotals and totals. The next thing is the columns. As I mentioned, there's 3 parts, and columns being the next part. What the columns allow you to do is the columns allow you to specify how you want the dates to appear down the top of your report. So for example, in this case we have 3 columns. Our column header shows net change, budget, and variance. The net change column is looking at net change on a particular general ledger entry. It's using the net amount and it's displayed. The budget also shows net change, but it's looking at budgeted entries, and we'll come back to the budgets in a little while. Also net change amount. And then finally the variance is a formula where the formula equals 100 times N column divided by B column minus 1. So what the system is allowing you to do here is to create custom columns looking at either general ledger accounts or at budgeting accounts. And for each of those GL or budgets, you're able to specify whether you want to see a particular formula adding up various columns, net change within them, balance of date, beginning balance, year to date, rest of fiscal year, or entire fiscal year. The final thing with regard to this is the formula column, which we mentioned with regards to the variance. And within the formula column, you can actually specify exactly as it's going to appear with these formula entries. So for example, variance, you might have a profit where you have a column for 2 particular months and against budget, or variance against cost budget, variance against profit budget, whatever the case might be. The third part that I wanted to show you was on the analysis view itself. Now I opened it very briefly, but we're going to have a look at it in a little bit more detail now as well. As I mentioned, the analysis view allows you to create a set of GL transactions, including point-in-time reporting. This set of GL transactions can be defined in terms of a particular code, for example, sales revenue, which GL account with regards to the account filter. Date compression, what date compression allows you to do is to specify how the system must add the various transactions together, the date on which it must start, and whether it must automatically update on posting. Now, what the automatic update on posting actually means is whenever a new financial transaction is posted through to the general ledger, the system will automatically update this analysis view card, keeping it up to date, keeping your reports up to date. The alternative to that is to manually update these transactions or this analysis view when you actually need it. Great. So those are the 3 areas. Area number 1, on your account schedule, you have rows. Area number 2, you have columns. And area number 3, you have a set of transactions that's either a snapshot of your financial system or a constantly updated set of GL transactions. So, to have a look at what we've actually covered so far, I am in the account schedules name section. I've selected the revenue report and I press the overview button. What this now shows us is a picture of what I've described so far. We have our rows, which you can see down the left-hand side here being displayed. We have our columns, net change, budget, and variance, and we have a set of transactions that actually add up to totals, what we're looking at. These particular lines, revenue areas 10 to 30, are where the system is actually looking at revenue but for a set of dimensions, and here revenue but for a set of dimensions. Some quite nice functionality with regards to the account schedule overview as well is you can right-click on a field and you can say drill down, and you can look at the individual transactions that make up that figure. So the overview is a picture of the account schedule. From the overview, you're also able to export to Excel. where you can save it as a particular Excel document, as well as print it and produce a printed copy. When you print it, it will include the page breaks that you've specified, where you said new page, new page, new page. The last bit then to look at will be the budgets themselves. So as I mentioned, you could have your general ledger transactions, you can specify dimensions, you can filter by those, but you can also do budget versus actual reporting. And if we have a look in GL budgets, the GL budget functionality allows you to capture a financial budget. You can have multiple GL budgets. Within each one of these GL budgets, you're able to specify for the 2014 budget for GL accounts set up on a monthly basis. Here are my financial accounts, and go down to, for example, your profit and loss account and capture amounts for each particular month. You can also drill down on those amounts to get a more detailed view and import and export budgets, but budgets weren't the purpose of this webinar. What I'd like to just show you is that capturing a financial budget inside of NAV will then automatically feed these figures through, where you create columns to do budget versus actual reporting. So, for the last time, quick recap. If we go into account schedules, we have a list of account schedules, capital structure, revenues, campaign analysis. For each one of these account schedules, we have a set of lines which determine the GL accounts that are being included. These might be filtered by dimension. We have a set of columns, and these columns define what we will see, and these columns could be net change, budget, and variance, as you see here. It could be month to date, it could be year to date, it could be current financial year versus previous financial year versus previous budget, for example. And we have a set of financial transactions which are called our analysis view, and for our analysis view you're able to specify whether it's a snapshot of your financial section, a financial system, or whether it's a constantly updating set of transactions that you're going to be using in your reporting. Do this. So first off, I opened the account schedule's name. From there I selected the revenues. I went into the overview, and from the overview I hit the print button. And here you can see a set of account schedule transactions within a print layout. So that was a quick overview of the account schedules. Great then. Thanks to everybody for coming. Yeah, hopefully we can do this again soon.